Sunday live stream, the update on the happenings of the Russo-Ukrainian war. As you can see, I'm a little bit improvised here. I'm in a hotel, so trying to get as much natural light out of the window in this room. And I have been in Ukraine for the last few days and was in Lviv. And it was quite a nice atmosphere in spite of everything that has been going on with the war. The Russians continue to attack many Ukrainian cities in the last few days. We have major attacks on Kyiv. Around 10 people have been killed, roughly. Scores of others injured by Russian attacks. Civilians hurt and killed. Again, it's become the norm over the last 3+ years with the extended invasion by Russia of Ukraine, which started in 2022. And Donald Trump, again, says things that sound very positive in terms of dealing with Vladimir Putin, complaining this morning about him attacking Ukrainian cities. However, at the same time, he starts complaining about Zelensky. He doesn't like what he says for, I guess, complaining about the terrorist attacks by Russia. So it's a bit of a bizarre situation. We haven't seen any concrete action by Donald Trump, just a lot of words. He only a few weeks ago was saying that he was going to bring on huge sanctions, although I think the scope for direct sanctions by the US of Russia is a bit limited, but they could have secondary sanctions, as they are known as, to target companies that are not Russian, that deal with Russia, and that could have a significant effect on Russia's ability to conduct war, basically to hit their pockets, to hit their revenues. However, he has not done anything in spite of Vladimir Putin refusing a truce, refusing to have a ceasefire, and all the time delaying everything. Now the latest plot or ploy by Vladimir Putin is to say that he's going to negotiate a memorandum. Basically, it will amount to an offer of a capitulation to Ukraine once again, which Ukraine will refuse. And Donald Trump has not introduced any sanctions, new sanctions against Russia. In fact, he's instead slapped a 50% tariff on the European Union for products coming from there to the United States, plus 25% on Apple if they don't produce their iPhones in the United States. So he's very quick to slam sanctions, because the tariff is a sanction on the US's allies, but doesn't seem to want to do it to Vladimir Putin, no matter how many outrages he commits, no matter how he ignores Donald Trump's efforts to get a peace agreement. I'm not very convinced by Donald Trump's, maybe I wouldn't say sincerity about getting a peace, because I think he wants peace, but he wants peace at any price, because from his point of view, that would mean make him look good. He made a campaign promise to end the war in a day. And in terms of getting a long-term just peace, he doesn't really seem to have much of a plan about how to do that, because the underlying reasons for this war still remain. Russia is an imperial power that wants to re-expand its empire and end Ukrainian independence of Moscow, whilst Ukraine doesn't want to be in Moscow's orbit, because that hasn't worked out so well for Ukraine in the last, well, we could say the last few centuries, basically, but definitely since independence of Ukraine, where they were pretty friendly with Russia. However, if you compare how life has developed for its citizens, compared to, say, Polish citizens in, obviously the neighboring country, they have become relatively poor. They started off with the same GDP per capita around 30 years ago. And yeah, 35 years later, Poland has about 4 times the GDP per capita of Ukraine and about double of Russia. Even has a higher GDP per capita than Moscow Oblast, the center of the Moscow Empire. So really, it's very clear that the war will go on. Donald Trump does not look serious about sanctioning Russia unless that changes on a whim. And Russia will continue to basically ignore his entreaties to find a peace agreement and play him along, string him along. And at a certain point, one can expect that Donald Trump will just move on to other things. That will probably suit Russia perfectly well, because in that scenario, while presumably the US is not going to supply new weapons or announce new aid for Ukraine, and that would obviously be in Russia's favor if Ukraine loses an important ally in terms of financing and material for their defense. So that is the current situation. It will basically be down to the Ukrainians along with their European allies in order to effectively defeat Russia. Doesn't look like there's much scope for any sort of peace agreement because the two sides just want diametrically opposed things. At least for now, it may be the case that later this year, if Russia starts to run out of money, manpower, and material, they might decide that a pause and pocket some huge concessions from especially the United States, since Donald Trump seemed to give them all of his cards before they even started negotiation, or most of them, and Russia, of course, just upped their demands for any sort of ceasefire, truce, peace treaty, any sort of cessation of hostilities. So that might be the case later this year, but we're talking about at least into the third quarter, if not into the last quarter of the year. And Russia may find solutions to all those problems in any case and continue to fight on. So Ukraine will have to ramp up domestic production. It will have to get more aid from its European allies. We have seen good steps in that direction by Europe in the last few months, really. However, it is not enough to assist Ukraine with any sort of plan to win the Russo-Ukrainian war. That would probably be, to quote the former head of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Valery Zaluzhny, require a big technological advancement and strategic use of technology in a strategy by one side or the other to break the current impasse on the front lines and lead to a victory. That may happen very suddenly if there is that kind of progress. Of course, we cannot predict when that will be. So that is the current state of affairs. Not really much has changed. Russia continues to make almost no gains on the battlefield. However, they regularly attack Ukrainian cities and basically launch terrorist attacks against Ukrainian civilians, whilst Donald Trump gives out about just about everybody, but doesn't take any concrete action to sanction Russia. So that's where we are. If you have any questions, see some of you are now, then write them in the comment section down below. I will give it another few minutes. I see David is there, and I will be heading back to Ukraine this week. I actually just was there for a few days, left again, and I'm in neighboring Poland. I will be going back very shortly in a few days again to Ukraine. So if you have any questions, please drop them down below the button there on my phone. And if not, we will see each other, or you will see me in some more content this week. I will be producing some more videos for this channel on standalone. And in that case, we will see each other then, because that is all that has happened this week. Just more terrorist attacks, more of the same. Very little progress by Russia, more terrorist attacks against Ukrainian civilians, and Donald Trump not really doing much in terms of sanctioning Russia for not at least being cooperative with his attempts to get a solution. He promised that he would have this war solved in a day. He made a grandiose campaign promise, like many politicians, without much to back it up. And yeah, obviously getting a long-term just peace is not something you could probably do even in a few months, never mind a day, 100 days. And now we are into, I guess at this point, we're coming up almost into June. So it's been inaugurated for over 4 months at this point, and we are no closer to a resolution of the Russo-Ukrainian war. That is not unexpected. And all that's happened is that he has basically forced Ukraine to agree to a lot of compromises that Russia just ignores and asks for more. So I'm going to leave it at that for today's live stream and catch up soon. If you're going to Ukraine, down below is a link to purchase my guide for going to Ukraine during the war, help you with staying as safe as possible, give you the logistical information, and also a hospitality guide for finding the best cafes, bars, and shisha lounges in cities like Odessa, Kyiv, Lviv, Chernovtsi, and Uzhhorod in the west of Ukraine. And that will save you a lot of time when you get to Ukraine on your trip if you are going there. So that's down below in the description to this video. There's also there my PayPal if you want to sponsor this channel, as I am doing it basically for the public good at the moment. It will presumably be monetized at some point in the future. And if you want to sponsor something, maybe a live stream, maybe a video, maybe just want to send a contribution, encourage me to make more content for this channel and give you my analysis. I have a background in international relations. I've worked at the European Union institutions as a lawyer and been living in Ukraine for many years, speak both Ukrainian and Russian. So giving you a bit more of a unique and quite often on the ground view of how the events are unfolding in the Russo-Ukrainian war. So on that note, I will say, do побачення, слава Україні, до перемоги.